Hey crafty people, it's Tasha. Welcome to my channel. I'm sharing a video that was previously on the Pear Blossom Press channel. I hope you enjoy it. Today I'll be creating this twinkling beating heart by doing a little bit of paper surgery. Let's start with the supplies that I'll be using. I've got this layering background die from Honeybee Stamps, this oh so punny stamp and die set from Hero Arts, the coloured translucent vellum, Twinkle Lights, and this interactive card stamp set, all from Pear Blossom Press. As usual, I'll also pull some other bits from my crafty stash as I go. I've stamped my image and a sentiment using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Since this ink stays wet for a little longer, it's perfect for embossing with, which of course means that I'm reaching for my trusty clear gloss from WOW. I'm sprinkling the powder over a scrap piece of paper so I can easily funnel the excess back into the jar. Now to heat set, I'm going to let my dual speed heat gun warm up on setting 2. Letting it get nice and hot first means I can melt the powder quickly without warping the cardstock. Once it's melted, it gives it a gorgeous glossy shine and it totally encapsulates that ink. It just makes it look even crisper. Now for some die cutting. I'm cutting both the image and sentiment using their coordinating dies, plus an extra of the image from this pink tone vellum. Now I'm going to set those aside for now while I prepare my background layers. This largest die from the set creates a panel that's slightly smaller than A2 and it adds some really lovely detailing. I'm cutting that from Nina Solar White and then I'm going to layer it over a pink cardstock panel. So the pink's going to peek through the little holes in the design and show around the edges. Then I've got this decorative die cut piece from a softer pink and finally a white circle to layer on top. Now, since I'm planning to place my battery pack behind that decorative pink piece, I'll also cut a small hole now that will let me thread my lights through later. Now that all the layers are cut, I can see how they look together. Now, I deliberately chose 2 different shades of pink, but honestly, looking at it now, I have no idea why. But rather than cutting another piece, I'm just going to fix it with a bit of ink blending. So I'm adding a soft blend around the edges and that's going to pull it closer to the background shade while still keeping the centre lighter, so it's almost like a spotlight effect for my little skunk. I'm blending on a glass mat because it helps my brush glide much more smoothly, and I always start by blending off the cardstock, work in circular motions and sweep the colour in onto the cardstock. Now this is going to prevent harsh splotches where your ink first touches the paper. I'm also applying very little pressure, so it's always better to build up colour gradually for a much smoother blend. Next, I'm adding some pink splatters to both my white panels. I like to mix a little water into the paint to wake up those metallic pigments. Then I tap my brush against another handle to create splatters. This technique gives me controlled kind of droplets rather than a fine mist, and I think that works beautifully for this design. I'm going to set those aside to dry whilst we move on to the fun part, the lights. Now I'm using a set of Twinkle Lights from Pear Blossom Press. This was originally a pack of 5, but I've only got a couple left. Now, like all their lights like these, they come attached, but you can easily bend and snap them apart. Now the battery slots in with the positive side facing up. It is clearly marked, so you really can't go wrong. Now I always test my lights after adding the battery just to make sure everything is working before I start assembling. Now that's actually the most technical part of this whole process done. So if you've ever felt intimidated by light up cards, these lights are a game changer. I like to place my battery pack first, especially when space is tight. Once I know where I want the button, like the press bit, to be, I can secure the metal housing in place with a little bit of double-sided adhesive. Then I'm threading the lights through the hole that I made earlier, using a little more tape to keep the wires tidy. Now, the back can look as messy as it needs to. Don't worry, no one's ever going to see that. So I also check the lights at every stage because it's much easier to fix something now than when the card is fully assembled. Okay, now it's time for that paper surgery. I love this cute little skunk, but I want the heart to be hollow, so I'm using my mini snips to carefully cut it out. The trick is to start at an easy to cover spot, so I made my first snip where the heart meets my skunk's body. Now, I know that fussy cutting isn't everyone's favourite thing, it can be really quite tedious, but hey, what can I say? I suffer for my art. So to get a smooth cut, I hold the scissors still and move the cardstock instead. Also, trim in sections, cutting up to the detailed areas first and then removing any excess before going back in to get those fiddly bits, get the angle right, and you're going to get a much smoother cut like that. Now for my secret weapon, a black marker. Running this along the cut edges hides any imperfections and makes the outline look seamless. It's also going to help disguise that little snip where I started my cut. To back the heart, I'm adding the pink vellum piece that I cut earlier. Strictly speaking, I could have just trimmed a scrap to size, but die cutting it ensures a perfect fit. Since vellum can warp if it gets too wet, I'm dabbing off any excess glue before pressing the layers together. Now we can assemble the card. So I'm layering up my background first, keeping these base layers flat since the battery pack will add plenty of dimension later. Before adhering the top layer, I need to punch a small hole for the lights to come through. I'm using a single hole punch and making sure it'll be hidden behind my skunk. Then I can thread the lights through, adjust any placement before securing everything with liquid adhesive, and adding a bit more tape anywhere needed to keep the wires in check. Now for my focal elements, I'm using Pear Blossom Press foam tape, which is really nice and thick. You're only going to need one layer for the battery pack to sit flush with the card. So again, I'm checking the lights because at this point I really don't want any surprises. Now for that sentiment, making sure that it's not going to cover where the button is, and I'm adhering it with liquid glue. Since this is a light up card, I also need to mark the button so that the recipient knows where to press. This little push stamp from Pear Blossom Press is perfect. The word is really small and subtle and it's not going to distract from the design. I'm stamping mine in the same pink that I used for ink blending before. So it's visible in person. You can just about see it on screen, but it's really visible in person. But it's going to blend beautifully with the background and not take anything away from the final design. Time for a few final touches. I'm embellishing with clear heart-shaped gems, placing them in my go-to arrangement, tried and true, 3 groupings for a total of 7. Now, odd numbers always look more balanced and pleasing to the eye. Speaking of balance, I wanted a third black element to tie everything together, so I grabbed one of these sweet sentiments from Wow. I always keep a stash of them pre-cut into strips ready to go, which makes life so much easier when I'm finishing a design. And that's my card complete. I love how the twinkle lights give the heart a kind of beating effect. It adds such a magical touch. I hope that this inspires you to experiment with these gorgeous lights and think outside the box with your supplies. Try a little paper surgery yourself to customise your designs and make them truly your own. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you aren't already, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like this video and drop any comments or questions below. Have a lovely, happy, safe and wonderful week. Stay crafty. Bye.